course. Come on, we can do it. There we go. Yeah, so it was quite a weekend. I was talking to her all weekend. I was emailing her back and forth. And she was complaining about her boyfriend. But everybody complains about their boyfriends. But of course, that's what we're talking about. Dr. Belvedere observed that his female students complained about their boyfriends more than they did their husbands, and men complained about their wives more than they did their girlfriends. That's what he noticed. Now this lady's kind of stuck in between this. She's complaining about her boyfriend that she just broke up with, of course, and part of the reason she broke up with him, I guess, is because she's pregnant. She doesn't like being pregnant. She doesn't want to be pregnant. She had to quit her job. She's so sick. Her morning sickness is, she's 4 months into it. I don't know. Anyway, she quit her job. Dr. Belvedere theorized that women treat men differently when they are dating than when they are married. This made women complain more before the wedding and men complain more after the wedding. That was the idea. Belvedere hypothesized that women believe that if they marry a man, they will be able to change all of his faults. He also hypothesized that men believe that if they marry their girlfriend, things will remain the same as they were when they were dating. In other words, the same thing will happen that was happening before. Social psychology uses 4 approaches to research. Field research is done in natural, real-life settings outside the laboratory. Laboratory research, of course, is done in the laboratory. Correlational research compares 2 or more variables, usually from a field study. And experimental research manipulates 1 or more variables in a controlled setting.
Can you give an example of correlation research?
Correlational research, the research that I did, I was correlating all of those different independent variables. I was looking at age, gender, education, level of trauma, and
Spirituality?
and cultural level.
Oh, yeah.
Cultural level. And I was comparing that with the resilience level. So when I looked at the 2, I compared age to resilience, and then I looked at gender to resilience. What's the difference? Are women more resilient than men? Those kinds of things. So I was correlating those.
So you're able to correlate the demographics to. Is that what you're doing?
Right. Yeah, I was correlating all that information.
I didn't know you can do that.
Well, you can do it.
Like all those variables.
Right.
I didn't know you can do that.
Yeah, you do it statistically. You use a statistical analysis.
Because I know when I was in stats, you said just to pick 2 variables to compare.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't understand. I was thinking like comparing all age and gender against what I was trying to.
Well, you can't put 3 variables together. I could compare age with resilience, and I could compare gender with resilience.
Okay.
So you only compare 2 things at a time. You can't compare more than 2 things at a time. Now, I could have compared age to education, but I don't know that it would have made any sense. Yeah. And of course, we were looking at resilience, so resilience wouldn't have been in the mix. Experimental research manipulates 1 or more variables in a controlled setting. And there you go. So Belvedere decided to do a preliminary meta-analysis on his hypothesis and found that studies from the 50s and 60s showed that women during that era rarely complained about men. And I lived through the 50s and 60s, and I can tell you that women were different back then. They really didn't. Most women stayed home and didn't work. But then in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the study showed increasing complaints about men. And this was mainly because women started going to work in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. The other thing that happened in the 70s, 80s, and 90s was the feminist movement was prevalent in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So there was a lot more, there were more things to complain about. Since women were out there in the workforce, they were being sexually harassed and whatnot, and they were complaining about men, which makes a lot more sense. Also, Also, they were working outside the home, but they were also working inside the home. And so before they were able to do their housework all day long, and that was it. But now they had to work an 8-hour day, and then they had to come home and still do the same housework. And a lot of the complaints about men afterwards had to do with the fact that the men weren't doing enough housework. They weren't sharing the housework. Both of them were working 8-hour days, and only she was doing the housework. Of course, this has changed over time. This has evolved over time. Belvedere decided to bring a group of subjects into the lab and give them a fictional scenario that the individuals would have to respond to. He discovered that men expected women to try to change them after marriage, and women felt compelled to try to change men. Before marriage, a lot of times mom does all the housework, and the kid doesn't do any, the guy doesn't do any housework. So all of a sudden he gets married, he thinks that his wife has become his mother. You're laughing. That's funny. Isn't this true?
I hope not.
It is. I'm sorry. It's the way it works.
Maybe not his mother, but a mother.
Yeah, somebody's mother does it. Yeah, so try to stay away from a mama's boy. Just, oh no. I'm sorry. Oh, now this is a tragedy. Yeah, he won't do anything. He's used to somebody else doing everything for him.
We were raised differently, so.
Wow, that's where it works. Well, let's get into this and see if we can fix this kid. The observational method involves systematic observation and measurement of behavior. Ethnography is a type of observational method used by cultural anthropologists and social psychologists to study and understand a group or a culture. Ethnography. And that's what Dr. Ami does. She's an ethnographer, she's an anthropologist. Participant observation is a form of systematic observation whereby the observer interacts with the people being observed but tries not to change the situation in any way. We're going to look at participant observation in just a second. Belvedere's next step was to put together a field study approach. He hired 25 females and 25 males to keep a diary of their conversations over a 2-week period. They were not allowed to steer any conversation or complaints about husbands or wives or whatever. There were not enough episodes of people complaining about the opposite sex to make any determination, so Belvedere decided to allow the people to bring the topic up in conversation. He manipulated a variable. So he was the one that decided that they would bring the topic up. Well, how do you feel about your husband? How do you feel about your boyfriend? How do you feel about your girlfriend? How do you feel about your wife? Interjudge reliability is the level of agreement between 2 or more people who independently observe and code a set of data. We see this all the time. We're doing qualitative research, and we have a mass of information, and 2 people have to look at the same mass of information and pick out of that what's significant. Okay, so you have 2 different people that are doing it. There is a problem with this. A lot of times the judges are prejudiced. So I'm looking for something specific. I'm looking at a group of first graders, and I want to see how often these kids are violent. And so I videotape kids on the playground, first graders on the playground. And then we take that videotape and we look at it. And we have 2 or 3 judges, and each one is picking out each act of violence that they see. Now, we have already prejudiced the 3 judges by using the word violence. So they have to determine on their own what violence is. But that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for violence. So guess what I'm going to see? A lot of violence. Yeah, I know. That's what I'm trying to see, and so that's what I'm going to see. If 2 kids are just kind of joking back and forth and pushing each other, is that violence? Well, that's the question. And of course, you've got 3 different judges, and each one may make a different determination. And that's the problem with this type of research. You've got 3 individuals, and they're making determinations. It's value judgment, and they're using their value judgment to determine whether something is one way or the other. And of course, that's what they're looking for. Archival analysis is a form of observational method whereby the researcher examines the accumulated documents of a culture. They look at documented information from the past and then they quantify it or qualify it, one or the other. When researchers decide to do research, they determine a population that they're going to perform the research on. Sorry, that thing always does that. The population could be as large as the world population, or the people taking social psychology at Diné College. Random sample is a survey procedure where every person in the population being studied has an equal chance of inclusion. That's a random sample. By only allowing a college or prison population to be surveyed, a researcher is creating an unrepresentative sample. Well, we see this a lot in social psychology. We see this a lot. I need to do research, I've got to publish, so I do research and I use my students. Well, is that a representative sample? What if I do my research at Harvard? Is that representative? Well, they're the smartest kids in the United States. Or Stanford, or Chicago, or it doesn't matter where I do my research. All my students are really, really bright. I don't have any average students. You did it too. I don't have any average students. I only have really, really smart students, okay?
Let's go to CIT.
I don't have that problem in this class, obviously. You guys keep dumping that thing. Anyway, okay, so it's not really very representative. What if I go to a prison? What kind of a population am I utilizing there? I'm utilizing people that are criminals. That's all they are. I mean, that's not all they are, of course, but they are criminals. And normally, if I surveyed my social psychology class, how many criminals am I going to? I don't want anybody to confess. Or
Would that be the minorities that are in prison, or do you think there's?
Well, yeah. Well, in prison, if you have if there's an excess number of minorities in the prison system, then yeah, or it's going to skew the results. But how about my college classes? At this institution, what if I did research on the guys here, on you guys, on all the individuals in this classroom? Is that a representative sample? Would that be representative?
Of the whole college, or?
Well, okay, I'll do it of all my classes, all the students in all my classes. Is that representative? What kind of information am I going to get if I just use my students? You're not
Sample.
well. You're not traditional students. Some of you are, but not all of you are.
Just depending on what you're going to research and what population you're going to target.
So what could I say about the research that I have? What could I possibly say about you guys? Well, you're all
Case study?
You're all Navajos.
Oh, yeah, true.
So all I could say was this is the way Navajos react to a select piece of
You could
information.
say it Native American instead of Navajo.
I could say that.
Because there are some other people who are half Navajo, half a different tribe,
Right.
or half Anglo, or
Sure.
somewhat.
Would that be accurate?
No.
If I do research here and I look at 200 different students, and almost all of you are you're all Navajo, and some of you have a few other tribes, can I say Native American? I mean, if I've got one individual that's half Comanche and half Navajo, how representative is he of, or she, whichever the case may be, of somebody that's from Oklahoma?
It would be based on what you put on your survey.
No, it wouldn't. Because all you guys are the same.
I'm just thinking about other people.
I can't use the word, I can't pretend that you guys are representative of all American Indians. I can't do that. Because the vast majority, well, you guys live on a reservation for one thing, and most American Indians live off the reservation. What are sometimes derogatorily termed urban Indians. But are you guys representative of anybody except reservation Indians in the Southwest? I know. I used to live in Oklahoma. I know. A lot of individuals in Oklahoma claim American Indian ancestry. It's like 11% in that state. But how Indian are they? There's only 2 reservations in Oklahoma. I know, it used to be a whole damn state. And now it's just 2 small reservations. So, there's a huge difference. And I can't look at one, there's 565 tribes or something. And this is the largest tribe, but that doesn't mean you're the most representative of everybody else. I mean, there's reservations up in Minnesota and Wisconsin. It's cold up there. North Dakota, Montana, Idaho, Washington State.
San Diego tribes are rich.
Yeah, down near the border. They all have Hispanic names. Well, where the Spanish were, they changed everybody. So you guys were able to stay away from the Spanish, so you don't have Spanish names. But if you lived in a pueblo, then potentially you have a Spanish name. Anyway, so we can talk about random samples. Where can I do research that it would be representative? Is there any place I can do research and make it representative? And the answer is probably no. A lot of the research is skewed, and this is one of the reasons why I want you to look at these. I want you to look at the research that you're doing, and when you read an article about research, I want you to find out where the hell these people come from, and who they were, and what ages were they, and what gender were they. All of this stuff can skew a result. So a lot of times we're looking at a piece of research, we're claiming that it's universal, but the reality is it's not, because it was 75% male. Or it was 95% Caucasian. Well, the United States is 70%.
What part of the research do they address that? Does the
Method.
method? Okay,
Should be in the method.
The researcher addresses that in the method.
He's supposed to, yeah. He should give you that information. The age range.
Limitations, is that what it's called?
No, he will not refer to it as limitations. I know, and that may be a problem. You don't tell Sarah and Sue that I'm talking about this stuff, because we won't go into that. But that's one of the things that makes psychological research questionable, is the fact that you use a random sample. How random is it? Is it really representative? That's the question that you have to ask yourself.
Or is it like a snowball effect?
Exactly. And you get a lot of skewed results. But it's up to you to decide how skewed these results are. You may do research in, Chicago, and find out that 15% of your population is gay. Well, wait a minute. Is 15% of the population gay? Is this new information? Should I write this up in the news and tell everybody the percentage of gay people in the United States is increasing? How representative was my sample? How many people did I look at? Where was I when I did this? Was I talking to a college population? Was I talking to, how old were the people that I'm talking about? That's the kind of information you need to look at. So we read this stuff all the time. And a lot of times it turns out to be erroneous or bogus. A meta-analysis examines the outcomes of many studies. Meta-analysis is a statistical technique used to combine information from many empirical studies on a single topic to be objectively estimate the reliability and the overall size of the effect. Meta-analysis. And you can do a meta-analysis. Meta-analysis just means that you read a lot of different research and put it all together. Meta-analytic researchers strive to include non-published studies to avoid the file drawer effect. And this is a problem we have in any research. So you have a hypothesis and you try to prove that hypothesis, sometimes you fail. Well, if you fail, a lot of researchers will not publish their failures. But the reality is they need to, because we need to include that in a meta-analysis. We need to include that in our research. We need to know not to try this again. But unfortunately, they don't do it. So, it's like 90% of all negative research isn't published. It's really kind of a tragedy. And that's what we need. We need that negative research so we know exactly what's going on. And they call it the file drawer effect, where you just, oops, it didn't work, so I'll just stick it in the file drawer and forget that it ever happened. Since findings from a single study are less convincing than findings from a series of studies, a meta-analysis can provide a clear statement of the state of research on a topic. And that's what I did with resilience in American Indians. I looked at all the people around the United States that had done research on American Indians. And one of the things that I discovered was that the more trauma that you suffer doesn't affect your resilience. In almost all populations that I read, the higher the trauma, the lower the resilience. But in the American Indian population, it's not that way. My research said that trauma didn't affect resilience.
It just stays the same?
Stays the same. So no matter what you suffer, your resilience is about the same. I know. There were 3 studies that showed this. One study was mine. Another study was from right here on this reservation. The other study was done on the Hopi reservation. Now, 2 of those pieces of research were in the same area. Mine's from the north, so I don't know if that proves anything or if that has anything to do with it. But that's 3 studies. 2 from the southwest and 1 from the northern plains. So that was kind of interesting. I don't know what I'm talking about. Sorry. A researcher can prejudice a sample by using an unrepresentative sample. Other ways of prejudicing the results of the survey include order of questions, limited response options, question wording, demand characteristics, subtle cueing of the participant to answer in a desired way. So that you can do all these things and prejudice your results. Participant observation, and this is one of the reasons why we use a published survey. We don't make up our own survey. How do we know that our survey is good? How do we know that it proves what we say it proves? And this is one of the reasons why we use a published survey. That way, it's already been used by a select population. They have to prove that it's accurate, that it proves what they say it proves. So if you use somebody else's survey, then a lot of times you don't have to worry about whether it actually works or not. Somebody else has already said it that it worked. And hopefully they've done it time after time after time. And actually that was all in my research as well. Participant observation is a subset of naturalistic observation. Researchers join the group to being studied as a participant. And we see this from time to time. An individual who joins Hell's Angels and then he writes up what he saw while he was in Hell's Angels. Now obviously, of course, he had to change his personality in order to be accepted by the group, potentially. That's what they thought I was doing up north. They thought that it was participant observation, and everybody said, "Oh, you look at us all the time." Oh golly, I look at everybody all the time. Yeah. Anyway, they thought I was trying to, trying to be an Indian so I could do my research. I wasn't. I was on the powwow committee, though. That was kind of fun. but I didn't write, none of that was in my research. Classical example of this type of research is a study of a doomsday cult by Leon Festinger and his colleagues in 1956. They joined the cult. They infiltrated the cult. Festinger and his colleagues chronicled the cognitive dissonance of the cult leaders and followers when the world did not end the 21st of December in 1956. So that's what they were doing. They were trying to figure out, or they were watching these individuals. And they, of course, we've seen this before. What was another group that did this? That group in California.
Heaven's Gate.
Heaven's Gate, exactly, Heaven's Gate, right. They thought the world was going to end, or at least they were going to go up into a spaceship that was following Hale-Bopp comet. Actually, they may have been correct to some extent. Now we've seen a comet that has come into our solar system, and it did some erratic things, and there has been speculation that it might have been an alien life form. I know. I don't have a marker. Yes, I do. Okay. If you're interested in this, look this up. It was like halfway through our solar system before we even found it. And it seemed to hide behind things. I know. Look it up. So there was a astrophysicist from Harvard that first speculated that it might have been an alien spacecraft. It reflected it was a comet, theoretically, and it reflected light, as strange as that is. Now, usually comets don't do that, but this one did. It was also cigar-shaped, so it was oblong, and normally comets don't come in that shape. So you can look it up. They've mocked it up. It's really kind of interesting. Like I said, they didn't find it until it was halfway through our solar system, and it got close to the sun. And then all of a sudden, it shot off in this interesting angle. So was it an alien life form or not? Who knows? But that is speculation right now. That is part of the speculation. Of course. Who am I to say? Okay.
Is that the one that sped up too when it left?
Yeah, it did speed up after it left, but they were thinking it was a slingshot effect from going around, pulling away from the sun. Yeah, and it went off at a strange angle. You can look it all up. It's really kind of fascinating. But they named it Umau, which means alien visitor in Hawaiian or something. Alien, yeah, I know, it's fun. Go ahead and look it up, it's fun. One reason that laboratory research is so widely used in science is because variables can be controlled. The variable that is manipulated or controlled by the researcher is known, of course, as the independent variable. The variable that is tested or measured is known as a dependent variable. Something we keep telling you. Doing research on people who are not aware that the experiment is, that you're experimenting on them is not ethical. This is what we saw in the Milgram experiment. They didn't know what they were experimenting. You need to tell people why you're there and why they're there. This is known as informed consent. You have to get the IRB has to agree with you that you could deceive your participants, and that doesn't happen very often. Yes, sir.
What if you're just doing it in a public area? Like if you're just watching people's...
Oh, well, there's no deception there.
Okay. You're just observing people?
Yeah, unless you're hiding things. I don't know if that's... I don't know how ethical that would be. Deception is misleading participants about the true purpose of the study. You can get approval to do this. It's not very common. Debriefing is explaining to participants at the end of an experiment the true purpose of the study. And this is part of the problem with the Milgram experiment. All those guys that did that stuff, all the individuals that took the Milgram test, none of those individuals were debriefed. So here we have an individual that goes into an experiment and shocks somebody to the point of killing them. And then they just left. They didn't tell them, well, you weren't really shocking anybody. They didn't tell them that. So you can imagine how bad they felt. I don't know if you've ever come close to killing anybody, but if you have ever been in that situation, it's fairly traumatic and it stays with you for a while, if not ever. So potentially these individuals had a problem. The other experiment was the Zimbardo, the famous Stanford prison experiment. And some of those individuals actually had mental problems after the experiment. One individual had a nervous breakdown while they were doing this, and he was one of the inmates, and he'd only been in there for 3 or 4 days before he had a really severe reaction. As interesting as that is. So you shouldn't deceive the individuals that your participants, and you need to debrief them afterwards. And I did debrief the individuals that took my survey. I sent them a letter. Everybody that participated, I sent them a letter and explained what the results were. We talk about correlations all the time. Yes, sir.
Oh, just itchy.
Okay.
Bugs.
A correlational method involves systematically measuring the relationship between 2 or more variables. It's a statistical analysis is what it is. I used regression analysis to compare my variables. Okay. But the correlational method, we have to determine what is the connection between two variables. You have to decide what that is. Is it a significant difference between the two? And you do that with by using correlational coefficients.
Both of them, do they have p-values? Or the
P-value tells you if it's if something happened in random. This is an R value.
Oh, the R value.
Yeah. The correlation coefficient is a statistic that assesses how well you can predict one variable from another. Yeah.
I have a question. I was trying to think of it earlier too, but what is that thing called again? I forgot what it was. We talked about it last week, where it's between 0 and 1.
Yeah, that's a correlation coefficient.
Where it says you're studying what you're actually supposed to be studying.
Right.
That's correlation value?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me show you. There can be a negative correlation and a positive correlation. A positive correlation means that if one thing happens, the other thing happens. A negative correlation means if one thing happens, the other thing doesn't happen. And so sometimes we're looking for negative correlations, sometimes we're looking for positive correlations. Normally there's no correlation at all, so it's close to 0. The larger the number, the stronger the correlation between the two. And whether it's negative or positive really doesn't matter whether it's negative or positive. The higher the number, the stronger the correlation.
So the more you can use it to forecast, the higher the correlation.
Right. Like ice and driving. The faster you drive, the more the ice there is on the road, the faster you drive, the more likely you're going to have a wreck. Okay. That's a positive. 99.9%. But it's 0.99. 0.99. Yeah. And if there wasn't any correlation between rain, how often can you drive in the rain without having an accident? Probably there's no correlation between rain and accident. There probably is a positive correlation to some extent. Well, it all depends on how fast you're driving, how good your tires are. I mean, look at all the variables. What the road surface is.
If you're not drunk.
If you're not drunk, yeah, that's a variable as well. One of the problems, well, I showed you how cold it was up there, the haze that was all over the area. Unfortunately, that haze, as soon as it turns warm, it goes above freezing. That haze, that moisture that's in the air, it will form black ice. We used to see this almost every day in Germany. Black ice would form. So if it were like 5 o'clock in the morning and you're driving down the road, even in the summertime, sometimes you'd hit a patch of black ice because of this haze that forms. The reason it forms is because the upper air is warmer than the air around the ground, and depending on how much the topography of the area, Sometimes it'll hold cold air, so it'll hold the cold air next to the ground. So as soon as it gets close to freezing, it'll just form black ice. And you've got all that moisture. But there's none. Yes, it is. Because I kept telling my wife that she knows what black ice looks like. We both lived in Germany for 3 years, so we know what black ice looks like. And I told her to be careful. She never listened. She's a colonel. What the hell? Why would she listen to a sergeant, right?
You can tell when there's black ice in the road. Actually looks a little darker.
If you can see it. If you can see it. But if it's 5 o'clock in the morning, you can't see it.
I think I've grown accustomed to the color of the roads here at day and night, so I'll notice when they're a little darker than usual. You can notice when it's starting to form.
If it's, especially if it's blacktop, and it's really dark, if it's fresh blacktop. Old blacktop,
Yeah, like the roads out here, you can tell.
Yeah, you get a haze on
Push on
the.
your brake and see.
There you go. See if you spin out and fly into the ditch.
You end up on the side of the road and
Yeah, that's one.
black eye.
That's one way to do it. Correlations are at or near zero, mean no relationship between the variables or a curvilinear relationship. Social science correlations rarely exceed 0.60 because most behavior is influenced by many different variables, just like you said. It isn't just the speed of the car and the quality of the road. I mean the road surface. It can mean the quality of your tires, whether you've been drinking, how awake you are. You know, all of these are variables as to whether you will spin out when you hit your brakes. I do that sometimes, and it just bugs the hell out of my wife. Why are you doing that? I'm just testing to see what the road's like, so I know how fast to go. Under controlled conditions, of course. I know how fast to go. She never does that. When two variables are related, correlated, there is a natural tendency to assume one causes the other. However, there are problems in assuming a cause. Third variable problem, it is very difficult to isolate only two variables in any situation. And of course, that's what I was trying to do. I looked at 5 different variables. I looked at 6 different variables. As 5 different variables as far as resilience was concerned, but there's far more than 5 different variables. How you were raised, the one that I would not deal with, and I told you about this, was spirituality. I didn't want to measure anybody's spirituality, even though there's a good survey for spirituality. We would have run into traditionalism, Catholicism, and evangelical Christianity, you know, and 3 of them, you know, pour all those things into the mix and you get all kinds of interesting information. I mean, here you've got the Mormon church is very strong on the reservation. There are people that are Mormon. You have strong traditionalism. I'm sure there are other religions around that could change how somebody reacts to, and whether they are resilient, how they react to things. So you can't just isolate things. You just can't do that. Home life, of course, is going to change somebody's level of resilience.
Family ties,
Yeah, extended family, exactly.
support system.
Quality of education, quality of the high school education. I mean, you develop all this stuff when you're relatively young, before you graduate from high school. So if you had a good high school, you had a good counselor, you had good teachers, then potentially your resilience would be higher. If you had a crappy high school with crappy counselors and crappy teachers, is anybody identifying with this? No? Okay.
I never knew we had a school counselor until I was a senior.
And he called you to his office and you said, "Who the hell are you? What are you talking about?"
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know what a school counselor was.
As funny as that is. The reverse causality problem, which variable is the cause and which is the effect? If we're talking about resilience, does it have to do with age? Does it have to do with education? Does it have to do with gender? What does it have to do with? Women do tend to be more resilient than men are, I'm sorry. You know, all of these things, how much trauma did you experience as a child? All of these things are factors. The correlational method identifies only whether two variables are associated, not why they are related, and that you can't tell. You can't tell if this is a cause or it's something else. Why in the world did I kill my wife? Well, was it because I'm just an angry person? Is it because I had a bad day? I had chocolate cake last night. I had this strange craving for chocolate cake. I had to drive down to Chinley and buy cake mix. And I made a cake last night. I know, I never eat cake. What's going on?
They sell cake mix at the same store.
They do? Oh, geez, I didn't have to go all the way to Chinley.
Then at the trading post at Tulsa.
And I went all the way to Chinley. Well, I was looking for something else and it wasn't there, so now I'm pissed. Anyway, so we don't know what the two variables are. Maybe I had a bad day or ate too much chocolate cake. Who knows why I shot the old lady, but I did. No, I didn't. She's up in Iowa. The correlational method often relies on surveys as well as on observational data. Surveys are used when the variable of interest is not easily observed. Surveys are structured sets of questions used to measure attitudes, beliefs, values, or behavioral tendencies. Four major survey techniques are face-to-face, written, phone, and computer surveys. And of course, you are all doing your computer surveys every week or so. You could also use phone surveys. You're not doing it?
What?
They are on the computer. Or we can catch these people face to face. If you've ever been in a mall, sometimes they'll run you down and get you to take a survey. I'll give you $1 if you take a survey. Format, delivery system, and question phrasing are aspects of the survey that must be carefully considered. If you are a Republican, the Republican National Committee sends you a survey every year. If you're a Democrat, the Democrat National Conference, I think, will send you a survey every year. I get both, and I can see both of them are skewed anytime I take them. They're aiming you to, they're trying to get you to donate money to them. So both of them have skewed questions. I know. I always answer them the opposite of the way they want me to answer them, just because I'm a jerk. And then I don't send them any money, but I send them it back because I have to pay postage.
You send them their 2 cents. You send them your 2 cents.
I send them my 2 cents plus more money. And then they have to pay, it's called franking, they have to pay the postage. It's only like 17 cents on it, 50-cent postage. But they still have to pay that damn 17 cents. The qualitative method investigates the why and how of social science, not just what, where, and when. Hence, smaller but focused samples are more often used than larger samples in qualitative methods. When I was starting to do my research up north, an individual had just come back from the University of Arizona. And she had studied in the American Indian Studies department. And according to those people at Arizona at that time, who knows who's there now, this was back in 2008. According to those people in 2008, you can't do quantitative research on American Indians. You can only do qualitative research. And this was a huge argument. This is one of the reasons why they rejected my research, because it was not qualitative. It was quantitative. And they said you can't do quantitative research on American Indians. I know, University of Arizona. I don't know if they've changed. Who knows? If a researcher could find an instrument that quantified a feeling or an idea used as a Likert or a Likert type scale, it is quantitative research. So if you've ever thought that you were depressed, actually if you go to the emergency room, they'll give you a Beck's depression inventory. And on a scale of 1 to 5, how depressed are you? On a scale of 1 to 5, do you feel like killing yourself? You know, they give you this every time you go
Actually,
in.
they just use a happy face and a sad face.
Oh, they're just putting...
But you can get like antidepressants if you go just to the hospital and say, hey, I'm feeling depressed. They got that?
Sure, the Beck's Depression Inventory, they've been using it for, I don't know, 50 years or so.
They just give it out if you're feeling.
They give it to everybody now. Whenever you go to the doctor, they give you a survey. In
Okay.
most, I don't know if IHS is using it. The last time I went in, they gave me a survey. I'm thinking, geez, man, I'm a psychologist. Do you think I'm going to answer this question the way you want me to? The Republicans can't get me to answer questions right, and neither can the Democrats. Because of lack of control of variables, it is difficult to impossible to determine cause. All you see is effect. That's all we know. We have no idea why something happened. We can't tell it. And this is one of the reasons why whenever we have a mass shooting, not this weekend, but the weekend before, we had 2 mass shootings where 5 people were killed in each situation. One was in Florida at a bank, and the other one was in Louisiana. I can't remember. Oh, Louisiana. The guy shot his mom and dad, then he went and he shot his girlfriend's dad, and his girlfriend's brother. Okay. Killed 5 people. Each of them killed 5 people. One guy just went into a bank and killed everybody in the bank. He wasn't trying to rob the place. He was just killing people. Decided that people needed to die in the bank. So he just went in. And they were both the same age. That was kind of interesting. They were both like 21 years old. So we know what the effect was, but we don't know what the cause was in either case. One obviously had to do with romance, and the other one, we don't know what caused it. And I haven't read it any place as to why this guy went into the bank and killed everybody in the bank. I doubt if it had to do with boyfriends, girlfriends, but theoretically he had nothing to do with anybody in the bank. He had no connection. He had traveled in order to go to that bank and kill the people in the bank. It's like 30 or 40 bucks. He didn't know anybody in the bank. Just kill them.
Was that his bank?
It wasn't even his bank. SunTrust. If you've ever been to Florida, SunTrust is like on every corner. So we can't tell the cause. All we can see is the effect. Now, if we lived in India or if we lived in China, we wouldn't care what the cause was. We would just say, this is very sad that this has happened. But in the United States, we want to know what the cause is, so that we can stop it next time, so that it doesn't happen again. So we are Americans, and that's the way we think. We want to know why people do things, so that we can look at them and try to figure out if that guy's going to be the one to shoot somebody. Observer bias is a second problem. Preconceived ideas held by the researcher affects the nature of the observations made. So if I saw somebody with their head shaved, long hair on top and then shaved on each side, tattoos all up and down their arm. Let me give you an example. About 3 years ago, I stopped at the Gallup Cracker Barrel, and sitting right across from me was a guy with more tattoos than I have ever seen. Well, it's not true. I got a nephew that has everything is tattooed except his face, his hands. Oh, I've never seen under his underwear, but I have no idea. But anyway, this guy was pretty tattooed, and they were prison tattoos. They were all the same color. What they do is they take ink and so these are all blue and black. All of his tattoos are blue and black, and they're really strange things. I mean, we're talking snakes, we're talking skulls, we're talking all kinds of really odd things. He also had some really strange piercings. He had that one where you expand, you put bigger and bigger hoops in your ears, and then it makes a bigger hole. But that was just one ear. The other ear he didn't have anything in the other ear. And he had a spike that went all the way through his septum. So it was a spike that ran from ear to ear. And it was about this long. And why would you do that? I mean, you're seeing this thing the whole time. Every time you look out, you're seeing this bar. I didn't understand. Anyway, so I'm looking at him, and of course he's got muscles. He's a relatively young kid, maybe in his 30s. So old. Yeah, maybe in his 30s. And I'm thinking, this guy looks a little bit dangerous. And he's sitting there by himself. He's eating by himself. And so they put me right behind him, and so I got to watch this kid all through breakfast. And I'm thinking, there's something wrong, there's something wrong. He doesn't seem very happy, the kid never smiles. He kept looking around, and then all of a sudden a little girl and a woman came and sat down right beside him. And of course, he just, he started smiling and he started laughing. I was biased by what he looked like. Observer bias. I thought he was dangerous. I thought potentially he had just gotten out of prison, which may have been true. But the mother and the little girl just changed his attitude completely. Before he seemed kind of defensive. Afterwards he was just open and you could see that there was no problem. Observer bias. That's observer bias. I was biased against the way he looked. He looked dangerous to me. And this is because I have had preconceived ideas about what dangerous people look like.
Or common sense.
Well, another situation, I was driving home one night from school. I had to drive up a hill, and there was a kid walking down the hill, and he had a rifle. It was raining, so he had the barrel turned down. I could see the butt of the rifle. It looked like an M16. It was more sophisticated than an M16. It looked like a AR-15, and I could see the barrel hanging out from under his coat. I saw the butt of the rifle was here, and he had this really mean, grouchy look on his face. And I'm thinking, oh my God, we're going to have a shooting. This is not good. He's got an automatic weapon, and he's walking down toward the school. This isn't good. Now in Iowa, you can have a gun, and it doesn't matter what the gun is, and as long as you don't shoot it, you're okay. You can't shoot a gun in the city limits, and this was Clinton, Iowa. And so, wow. And he had this look on his face like he was headed someplace, and he was mad. He had a mad, mean look on his face. Of course, it was raining. So what would you do?
Drop them off at my ex's house.
All my exes live in Texas, and this was Iowa.
Just talk to him, engage him, conversation.
I was driving up the hill, he was walking down the hill.
Oh,
I was in my little Miata. It would have hit him right about here. So what do? Do I just ignore it, pretend that nothing bad is going to happen? Is that what I should do? What would you have done?
You could have let the law officers know.
I could have done that. I didn't have a cell phone at the time. I was driving up the hill. I was headed home. He was walking toward the campus. Campus was probably 100, 150 yards away.
I just gave him a ride.
He was going the opposite direction.
Give him a ride past the school. Take 5 minutes out of your
I don't know. This is a Miata. It's really small. Okay? All my stuff is in my other seat, so I would have had to have stopped my car, taken all my stuff out, and put it in the trunk, and then given him a ride if he would have accepted it.
I'd call the police, because it
I
isn't...
didn't have a cell phone.
But then I don't think.
But it's not against the law to carry a gun in Iowa.
What is it? Oh, I'm just carrying a gun just for fun. It makes me look cool.
Everybody-
What do you use a gun for?
It happens here all the time. This is all hunting area right here.
I get the hunting,
This is
but
all
like,
hunting area.
if you're
I don't
just
think you would
carrying
be able to
it...
do anything.
I carry
That's
guns.
basically your assumption that he's
Well,
actually
actually-
using it.
So just drive away.
What else can you do? You know?
These are all my students down there.
I mean, like, you would have been, the gun might have been empty. You might have just been walking near the school.
We can make all the excuses in the world.
But there's cases for guns. He was holding it.
He was holding it, and he was holding it under his coat,
But you said that there's
and it was raining.
I think it depends.
nothing wrong with carrying a gun in Iowa.
That's true.
There's nothing wrong with carrying a gun in Arizona either.
And that's true. But if I saw somebody carrying an AR-15 down the road and he looked like he was mad,
I get a
would I
handgun,
do?
but the type of gun it sounds like he was holding, like, what are you going to use it for? I get a handgun, but not what he's describing.
It's a
What do you use
military
that
weapon.
for?
I've gone hunting with my AR-15 just right over this hill right
oh
off campus.
God, what are you gonna do? You shoot someone with an AR-15, you're gonna blow.
Well,
A
first
big
of all,
shot.
because I'm not rich, I don't have the luxury of having a specific gun for every type of animal I want to shoot.
Okay.
So I get one that will get the whole gamut,
Jeez, can you
from
imagine?
prairie dog to bucks.
Have you ever, well,
It's utilitarian, you know, I can use it for many purposes. So that's why I got that. I don't have a gun for each specific animal. That I'm
it's
using.
obviously not for shooting rabbits.
Oh, yeah, we use it to get prairie dogs.
Yeah, but that blows them apart.
It depends on where you hit it. I mean, if you hit it right in the head or somewhere, you can still have the whole body to eat the meaty portion. You're not gonna eat the head, so you shoot off the head.
Shoot the head off.
If
Okay.
you go prairie dog hunting, you know you don't need one shot, one. you know,
One
it's
shot,
not
one
gonna-
kill?
It's not gonna work. You need something that's gonna have rapid fire, semi-automatic rifle fire. And then if you go hunting deer as well, if you don't take it down on the first shot, you need to track it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've tracked animals like 4 or 5 miles, and you can't let it go. You have to track it. So if you have the ability to hit it again quick, then that's advantageous for you.
You're changing the subject. What should
No,
I?
I'm
No.
saying that
What
you
am I
can have a gun on near campus.
What am I gonna do with this guy?
Mind your own business, let him go.
Mind my own business, let him go, so he opens fire at the.
Well, you didn't want to turn around and give him a ride, so just let it be.
Are you asking what we would have done, or what
Yeah.
you should
What
have done?
what should I have done?
Call the police.
I-
At least let them know.
You gotta understand that I'm looking at, you know, you see people all the time. And when you see something that is out of, your brain tries to tell you everything's okay. Isn't that the way it works? So here I'm looking at this guy and I'm trying to make that gun out to be anything but a rifle. My brain is trying. So by the time I passed him, I had focused on what was actually going on. I'm looking at this kid, I'm looking at his face. The first thing I saw was the anger in his eyes, was the anger in his face. And I was thinking, ooh, that he looks dangerous. And then I saw the gun, and I went, he looks real dangerous. By that time, I was already passed.
I mean, you're in the military, right? What do you use that gun for?
It was a psychology class.
But what do you use that gun for?
What do I use that gun for? I don't use that gun at all. We never got a gun that was that nice.
He's avoiding
We only had M16s, we didn't have AR-15s.
But still, it's just, I mean, was there any animals? Was there a forest nearby?
No, you can't discharge a weapon in the city.
It's a city! Why is he carrying a gun?
He was. That was the point.
He might have been taking his gun to the gun shop.
Could have been anything. We can rationalize what he was doing with the gun all day long. But I've got to decide whether I'm going to do something about it.
So you can't.
Do I let the kid go?
Unless it's
The,
assuming.
unfortunately, the dormitories are right next to the road. This kid's going to walk right past the dormitories.
Well, you'll know that.
I know that if he stays on that road and he keeps walking the direction he's going, in about 100 yards, he's going to pass the dormitory. And if he decided to, he could shoot out all the windows.
Well, if he wanted to shoot people, he would have probably already started with you when you were driving
No,
past.
there was all
So if
kinds
you
of-
assume that he's just going to start shooting people, why didn't he shoot you?
No,
Maybe he was going to just keep doing what he was doing and just keep walking.
Maybe there was a target.
I'm
Yeah.
driving down the road. If he shoots at people in the dormitory, shooting at stable targets, I'm moving. He's gonna.
Yeah, but you're moving right towards him.
And he's also telling everybody that he's going to open fire.
He told everybody, you heard that as you were driving by?
No. That's what I'm thinking.
Uh,
So he's not going to shoot me.
So you have a
He's not going to
bias.
shoot the dump truck that just went past. If he's going to open fire, he's going to open fire at the dormitory so we can kill more people.
Or that's what you would do. And so you
I'm
assume
not
he would do
thinking.
that.
No, I'm not thinking.
He might just be walking, minding
It
his
doesn't have anything to do with me. It has to do with the look on his face, the weapon that he's carrying, and, well, it was raining. So what would you do?
Maybe he was mad because no one wasn't picking him
You
up
can
in the
rationalize this all day long. What the hell do you do?
Call the police.
I don't have a phone.
Then go to the nearest place of call. I think it would be your responsibility as a professor and near a campus to call someone. Let somebody know regardless of the reason.
And I did take that responsibility, but I had about 15 seconds to make a decision.
Okay, what if somebody was on the road right here, same situation and everything. He's walking down this way with a gun.
Right.
But he could probably live in like one of the houses or something.
We can rationalize it all day long, but you have to decide what the hell you want to do with this stuff. And you've only got seconds to make that decision. Because if you make the wrong decision, 5 people die in a bang.
It's too easy.
I know, that's a possibility. And maybe it's 1 out of 100 chances that something bad's going to happen. But
Actually, it's a lot less than 100.
Sure.
If you look at statistically speaking, if you look at all the gun owners in America versus how many mass shootings, that's 3 or more shootings per citizen, we're not even close to 1 in 100. It's like 1 in 10,000.
oh my goodness, what is it? There's like 115 million guns in the United States. Or something.
Out of that 115 million, then it's 350 million residents, citizens in the United States, so that's 1 in 3 guns per citizen.
The statistics, I know the statistics.
So it's not even close
and
to
I don't
100.
really care, because I've got the one case. I've got an angry man with an AR-15.
Do you assume he's
who's
angry?
walking? No, I can see it in his face. I can see it in the way
People
that he's
assume I'm
walking.
angry sometimes. I'm
I was
just,
gonna say that too.
I can see it. I can see it. I know that this man's angry. It's the first thing that I noticed. He's pissed, and he's walking toward my students with an AR-15 that I can
Wait,
see.
what if he was really happy and he was carrying
Then
it?
I wouldn't even have noticed it.
He has a gun!
I know.
That's
I
just
probably-
a psycho right there.
The whole
probably.
reason that I looked him over was because he looked so pissed off, like he was headed someplace to do something. He looked that way.
you made that whole assessment
Right there.
in 3 seconds. of
Oh,
passing.
you do the same thing all the time. We all do. We all do. The 2 of us have been trained to see this stuff. We know what anger looks like. We know what rage looks like. Don't we?
If it were me, if somebody was walking in the rain, I would have just stopped. Taking 5 minutes out of my time.
He was headed the other direction. I was headed home. I was headed home. I was thinking about
You didn't want to be the first victim?
what was I going to be for supper? What was I going to eat for supper?
And then I guess if that happens, if you were just gonna be on your way home, that's what you thought, and you're over here, but then you're getting put in a position to where you have to figure out what to do, then I guess it would be your responsibility to make sure that nothing happens to that campus.
Exactly. I have to make
So
sure.
you would have to follow him, or find out what he's doing.
It's
where
my
he's going.
responsibility. It's my responsibility. If I had been close, if I had had a cell phone, I would have called someone. If I'd been closer to the school, the security guys are all my buddies. They're all ex-military. We used to have jaw sessions all the time. We used to talk about this stuff all the time. So what I did was I turned around and I went back, and I was gonna take him out, because just in case.
With your car?
I was gonna take him out with my car.
Just for a walk?
And like I
down the
said,
road?
I would hit him right here. Now, the reality is, he can take that gun out and he can aim it at anybody. And as
I
long
thought
as
you just said he wasn't going to shoot anybody.
and as long as he doesn't pull the trigger, then I'm at fault. But I decided that I was going to turn around and make sure that he wasn't going to hurt anybody. So I did. I turned around and he was right in front of the school when I got back. I turned around and came back down the hill. But he was getting in a car, and he was screaming at this young lady. And he had his gun. He put it in beside the seat. But what he was mad at was whoever had let him walk in the rain, I guess. But I mean, he could have opened fire. It was very likely. He was pissed, and I could see it in his face. And he was screaming at this lady.
You know, the odd thing is that cars kill more people than guns. I'm sure you've seen.
Doesn't have anything to do with any of this stuff. It doesn't have anything to do with
Get in
this.
their car, but you don't follow them. You know,
No, of course not. Of course not.
cars kill way more people than guns.
That's
But you don't follow
doesn't-
people who get angry in their cars.
Yeah, but usually if somebody hits somebody in a car, they only kill 1 or 2 people. In this case, he could have killed all my students. These are my students.
There was
And I have to be responsible.
accident down the road where 4 people died this past December. People died.
You're changing the subject.
I'm just
You're
saying.
changing the subject. And we're talking about observer bias.
Just saying, if you're gonna look at what actually kills more people, cars kill more people. And you're talking about, well, that person looked angry. If cars kill more people and someone looks angry in the vehicle, how come you don't follow them? It's like gun phobia.
Yeah, we see people drive road rage all the time. But of course, you're not going to ram into somebody's car just because they're angry. Probably make them angrier. My wife did that one time up in Washington D.C. And the guy got out of his car, and she thought he was going to punch him. But of course, he didn't. She's a woman. He's a man. Wasn't going to do that. Presence of an observer may change the behavior of the sample and may not act authentically, but in a manner that they think the observer desires. There may be a question of invaded privacy, of course, and that's why you can't just watch anybody. It's kind of like stalking. There's laws against that. So the question is, was the Milgram experiment unethical? There were questionable practices in research that they used. They used deception, they used a confederate, and all of these things are questionable and may be considered unethical. I would suggest that you go to this website and look at the Milgram experiment. It's about a 10-minute video, and they talk about whether it was ethical or whether it was unethical.
I think I saw a clip before. This is where they were shocking people, right? The people who were shocking them, a lot of them got up and, they looked like, I don't want to do this anymore. And
Right.
the guy was like, no, you have to keep going. And they sit right back down.
That's right.
And they seem like they're really, like, startled or they're
Really
ashamed.
upset, and
Yeah.
they never debrief these individuals. That was the problem. 65% of the people that they told to shock, the other individual did it. Both males and females. They've done this all around the world. And guess which group, of all the people in the world, guess which group were more likely to do what they were told? Of all the countries in the entire world,
United States.
no, we weren't number one.
Oh.
We were not number one.
China.
No,
It's not Germany, is
it is true. Yeah, we hit at 65%, they hit at 80%.
When was the study done?
Back in the 60s.
What was Germany's economy like in the 60s?
It was fine. It was recovered.
Okay.
I bet if you redo this study or this whole thing again, it would be totally different.
Well, we can't do it anymore. We can't do this study because it's unethical.
You could.
You can't. That's the whole
Now
We're just
I'm
gonna get it
wondering.
No, you can't do it.
It would go under meta studies.
Good. Let's finish that up. Okay, we won't talk about guns anymore, just so that we'll make Emery happy. We're just here to make you happy. Okay. How we think about the social world. So the question is, so I've got a student and she's pregnant. She's four months pregnant. She's thinking that maybe she doesn't want the baby. So depending on who she is, depending on where she is, depending on her religion, depending on who she talks to, she has to decide whether she wants to keep the baby or not. Now that may be antithesis, that may be anathema as far as you guys are concerned, but I mean she has to make this decision, and it's her decision. I tried to tell her that all babies are a blessing. I don't know if it worked. I have no idea. I don't know what she's going to do. But she is communicating with me, which is good that she's communicating. And maybe I can talk her out of it. Maybe I can talk her into going ahead and having the baby. But I don't know. I mean, it's up to her. She's the one that's got to raise it. I mean, here I'm talking her into it, and it's for 18 years, or 22 or 46 years, she's going to have to take care of this kid. you know, I'm not gonna have anything, I'm gonna be dead by that time. Like, problem. Anyway, so, society and social norms. You know, it's her society. And it's Hispanic, so you saw that she was Hispanic. Did you notice she was Hispanic? Okay. You didn't think she was Hispanic? Did you think, okay.
Hey, I don't know. I wasn't thinking about that at the
Oh,
time.
okay. You didn't notice her blue dress? She bragged about her blue dress. Okay, we need to stop this right now, and you guys need to go.